Today we'll be working in my workbook called Abram's Trials of Faith that cover Genesis 11:27 through 19:29. And if we go to the table of contents, have already handled the first 8 chapters. We've gone where Abram has traveled from the Ur of Chaldees and stays in Haran, where his father Terah dies. Abram gets his actually second call from God, even though the first one isn't covered in Genesis. We see him traveling to Egypt and failing a trial God has given him there because he passes his wife off as his sister, although not totally untrue. So when they come back into the land of Canaan, the possessions of Lot and the possessions of Abram are so big that they have to separate. This is the second trial, and Abram passes this one because Lot picks the best land, which is the fertile valley of the Jordan River, and Abram gets the land of Canaan. And God actually tells him that he will have that land as well, but um, that's for another time, or that is his descendants will. Then in the next chapter, we have a situation where Lot is captured by 4 kings from the east, not just Lot, but all the people and possessions of the cities of the Jordan Valley. And Abram goes and rescues Lot and his possessions and all the people and their possessions and returns them back to where they belong. We also have where he meets Melchizedek in this chapter as well. Then we have the Lord's covenant with Abram again, where he talks about his descendants being like stars of the sky. Now, one of the important points of that is that he never says Sarah is going to have the descendants as well. He just says that Abram will have descendants like stars in the sky, and Abram doesn't understand how he can do that at the age that he is. But and anyway, so that is kind of results into the next chapter, which is Sarai and Hagar. Hagar being her Egyptian handmaid. Sarah has been unable to have children, and she is very old, and so she gives Hagar to Abram as a surrogate mother. And Hagar, of course, gets pregnant right away. There's quite a discord between Sarah and Hagar runs away, and the angel of the Lord tells her to go back, submit to Sarai, and have the child. And of course, the child is born. Child's name is Ishmael. And at the time, they think that that's the child of promise, although it isn't, but they don't know that yet. So then in chapter 8, God comes and prepares their household, Abram's household, for the child of promise. And this is the time of circumcision, where circumcision is where Abram and his whole household has to be circumcised before the baby comes. And at this point, Ishmael is 13 years of age. So now we're going to get into chapter 9, Abram's 3 visitors. Okay, so Abram's 3 visitors. Abraham's 3 visitors. His name has been changed at this point. Let me take a drink real quick. Genesis 18, 1 through 15. Genesis 18:1. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, which is near Hebron, where he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. So something about these 3 men let Abraham know that they were special men. He may not have realized they were angels yet, but maybe just the fact that they're dressed the way they're dressed and maybe don't look weary or tired. I don't know, but somehow he knew that these were men that he needed to respect and honor. The idea of offering them, well, what town is the great trees of Mamre near again? It's near the Hebron. And Hebron, the area of Hebron is where a lot of the family stays almost until Egypt. They move around, but Hebron is their main location. Where was Abraham when this happened? He was near the great trees of Mamre. What time of day was it? It was in the heat of the day, so probably during the noon or around there. How many men did Abraham see? He saw 3 men. Who are these 3 men? We know one is the Lord, Jesus, and the other are angels, but we will learn this soon. We don't know this at this point. What did Abraham do when he saw them? He bowed low to the ground. So, as I say, somehow he knows these are um, um, important people. Many of the actions Abraham will do represents the hospitality of the day. So, how or when can we know that Abraham considers these men special? It is in the heat of the day in a very dry terrain. These men look well rested, even though they have no means of transport or shade. So that's a good indication. What is the advice that we get again about angels below from the below scripture that Abraham is doing? Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. So, yes, we should show hospitality. In our world, we have to be careful, but we need to show hospitality. The scriptures continue. Genesis 18:3. He said, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant. Very well, they answered, do as you say. All these actions are part of the customs of the hospitality of the day. At that time, if you saw strangers, you were supposed to welcome them and treat them well as they're traveling. What does Abraham call the leader? My Lord. Notice the difference in capitalization of Lord in verse 18:1 versus the same word in 18:3. What does this tell us about what Lord Abraham is referring to? Does he know it's the Lord, or merely a distinguished man with his servants walking by that he's showing respect to? 18:1, if you recall, it says it has a capital L. This one has a little l. And so he does not yet know this is the Lord, Jesus. He just knows that it is a respected person who he's calling Lord. There is a difference. What is the first action he offers these 3 men in verse 4? Let water be brought that you may wash your feet and rest under the tree. Realize that in these days, they either walked barefoot or they had sandals. So, and the roads would be dusty and dirty, not clean with pave walks, or yeah, you know what I mean. Anyway, this was a common act of hospitality of the day, as the ground was dusty and many either wore sandals or walked barefooted. What is the second action Abraham offers? Let me get you something to eat. Do the 3 men accept the offers that Abraham gave? Yes, they do. Other than the strangeness of their arrival, is there anything yet to let Abraham know who these men are? No. I mean, he may suspect because they're dressed nicely and don't seem to be tired, but he has no proof yet. So the scriptures continue. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. Quick, he said, get 3 shills of finest flour and knead it and bake some bread. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. Then he brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set them for them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. All these actions are still part of the hospitality of the day. So notice that Sarah is going to be making flatbread because there's no time to rise the bread. And, you know, tender calf, killing it, preparing it, cooking it. Um, that would have taken a little time, but he did bring curds and milk um, to the bed, and then when the calf is prepared, he brings this as well. So this is a time frame, not right away, instantly. Probably most of the afternoon. What does Abraham have Sarah do? Make some bread. And again, this is all part of the hospitality of the day. You had visitors, you treated them nice. What does Abraham have a servant do? Had a servant take a tender calf and prepare it to eat. That is, cut it up, butcher it. Abraham brought 3 items to place in front of the 3 men. What are they? He brought curds, milk, the calf of the prepared, and I guess the bread would have come too, but it doesn't say that, huh? But yeah, there would have been some bread too. So there's actually 4 items. Technically, the first 2 would have been brought right away, and the calf and bread would have come after they had been cooked. Did the 3 men eat the food put before them? Yes, they ate. Now, notice here, angels can eat. Kind of an interesting thing. Angels can eat our food. Well, and I say that too. Can angels eat human food? Apparently, so we see this also in Genesis 19:3, when the same angels will eat the food that Lot prepares for them. 5, did Abraham eat with them? No, he stood near them under a tree, and that's where he was while they ate. Again, this is the normal custom of the day. Abraham is prepared to get the strangers anything they need. So the scriptures continue. Genesis 18:9. Where's your wife Sarah? They asked. They're in the tent, he said. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Abraham now finally has some indication that this is more than just 3 men. He now realizes that they are special men. What does one of the men ask Abraham? Where his wife Sarah is. This would have been odd. Asking about Abraham's wife or the women of the household at this time would only have been done if the woman was going to be a topic of their conversation. If it would not have been abnormal for a woman inside the tent to be listening in. These men are strangers. Who are they? What do they want? What else can I have ready when Abraham asks? There could have been plenty of reasons that the women would have been listening. But what do you think would happen if you hear your name in the conversation? Well, then my ears would perk up and I'm wanting to hear more. One of them, the Lord, tells Abraham what about Sarah? That when they return in a year's time, Sarah will have a son. Specifically, when would this happen to Sarah? In a year's time. So she will already have given birth when he returns. Check again 17:21. What is the time frame as to when Sarah will have a son in that passage? That was 17:21. If you look back at it, the time frame is also 1 year. It is back in our chapters here. By this, we know this event did not happen very long after the last one. So this gives us a time frame of when this happened versus the last time the Lord visited Abraham. The Lord has just told Abraham that Sarah will have a son in the prior passage, and yet he tells him again here. Why do you think he's telling him again? Well, I will tell you what I think. I think it's because so that Sarah knows for sure. Because I'm sure Abraham came back and told her the first time that she was going to have a son, and she didn't believe it. She's way too old. But now she is hearing through the flap of the tent that she indeed will have a son. And I think it's all for Sarah. That's my opinion, though. Who knows? Genesis 18:10. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. Yes, we know this. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I'm worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Where is Sarah? She's listening at the entrance to the tent, and that's what she's doing. There were some problems to the statement that the Lord just said. What was wrong with Abraham? He was very old. But what were things wrong with Sarah? She's way too old and she's way past childbearing. If you think about a woman's body and the things that are required in order to have a child, God is doing a lot of miracles here. When Sarah heard what the Lord said, what reaction did she have? She laughed. Did she say her feelings out loud or to herself? Um, Remember here, she laughed to herself. Review 17:17. What was Abraham's reaction when he heard that Sarah would have a son? He laughed. How old will Sarah and Abraham be again when Isaac is born? Let's look again at Genesis 17:17. For me personally, this is the reason why the Lord came to see Abraham this day. Abraham would have shared what God had told him in Genesis 17:17 with Sarah, which is 17:17. It said, by the way, let's answer this question first. Okay. In 17:17, Abraham laughed when he heard that he was going to have a son through Sarah, and she will be 90 and he will be 100 years of age. So for me personally, this is the reason why the Lord came to Abraham this day. Abraham would have shared what God had told him in Genesis 17:17 with Sarah. But I would imagine, after all the length of time, Sarah just simply would not have believed it to be true. She had to hear it herself and also know that it was the Lord, as will happen next for her, to believe it will be true. Here we see that the Lord, through working with the customs of the day, still was interested enough in Sarah to have her hear it personally. Genesis 18:13. And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I didn't laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. Yeah. What was the sound that Sarah made with her reaction? She laughed. Did Sarah say the words or did she think the words? She she thought the words. She didn't say the words. How does this affirm that this is not just a Lord, but the Lord, because he was able to read her thoughts? Looking at the scriptures below and also verse 14, what do we know? Jeremiah 32:26-27. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is there anything too hard for me? Matthew 19:26. Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Matthew 17:20. He replied, because you have so little faith, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So, looking at the scriptures and below, we know that nothing is impossible with God. Why did Sarah lie to the Lord? Because she was embarrassed. She didn't want to look like she was questioning the Lord's statement. She was embarrassed. I would imagine that would have been a natural reaction to deny disbelief, which is why God didn't punish her for it. Yeah, some that would probably be a quick natural reaction, but he didn't punish her or anything for it. So now we come to the end of the chapter, the crossword. Number 5, Sarah was surprised she was going to have a child since she is past the age of childbearing. 5 is childbearing. 6, Abraham brought the 3 men water to wash their feet. 9, when confronted about her laughter, Sarah lied because she was afraid. Number 10, Sarah will have a son this time next year. One down. Aside from the prepared calf, Abraham also brought curds and milk to the three men. Sarah is inside the tent. How many men came to visit Abraham? 3. When Sarah heard she was going to have a son, she laughed. 7. Abraham's tents are near the great trees of Mamre, M-A-M-R-E. 8. Sarah was to bake some bread for the three men. And 11. Aside from water, Abraham also offered them food to eat. That's the end of this chapter. Enjoy.